I just want to do a quick introduction to the session, but these guys are going to be driving all the content and going to the Copilot studio. But my name is Victor. I look after the software team at PB Tech. I know most of you here. Most of you are a Microsoft client, which is pretty cool. And the rest is soon to become one, believe it or not. But yeah, we're just here today, guys, to deliver on our promise around the community sense and the upskilling that we always talk about when we're talking to potential new Microsoft clients and our current clients as well. So we wanted to create something where we are continue to communicate to our clients new technologies, new things that they're going to be doing on a proactive way, not only when you need that. So you can take this knowledge to make the best decisions to your business, right? On top of that, we have the best pricing. You heard about that before. We do lots around automation. We have a portal. We have a great support team and blah, blah, blah. You heard me saying that before. But this is the core of the benefits that we offer, right? You probably attended one of our previous events, Microsoft 365 Copilot. We did one last year on security as well. We did another one for security at this very room here. But that's only growing the community. We're having more clients. We're putting people together. They're discussing about their business to each other, bouncing back ideas. And that's exactly the feeling that we want to create with our clients, that they are part of a community and we are here to help, right? So I'm just going to introduce a few people in the room. Ronnie, who leads our commercial team here. Liam and Craig, both Microsoft specialists. They will introduce themselves afterwards. Alex, who is part of our Microsoft team. And your team of account managers who are all sitting at the back right now doing nothing. So, yeah, look, how the session is going to take place today. Ronnie is going to step in and share a little bit about his experience with his clients on AI. So in practical terms, how people are actually implementing and what tasks are being addressed on an operational level for a business and how that looks like to our clients and internally for PB Tech as well. So we have our exciting AI engine that was built in-house. It wasn't through Copilot Studio, but nonetheless, it's super cool. It's called Olive, and he's going to be sharing that because he overseeing the implementation of that tool at PB Tech. And then after that, we're going to jump into the Copilot Studio session where Craig's going to share a little bit about the product, best practices, things to take in consideration before planning the implementation, and go through a demonstration, which will be pretty cool. And then Liam's just going to do a little bit on the licensing side, and most importantly, how much it's going to cost you. So without anything else, yeah?
As you can see, we did the presentation rehearsal on Friday night. And at PB, our AI order bot, our robot thingy, is called Olive. The reason it's called Olive is because we write all of our own software at PB Tech. When we first started, the first thing we wrote was our invoicing system and our accounts and ERP system and stock control, and that was called, we didn't know what to call it, so we called it PB for PB Tech, which stands for Pat and Brenda, but Pat and Brenda seemed a stupid name to call a piece of software, so we called it Peanut Butter. And then the next thing that we wrote was our health and safety officer wanted a thing that you could use to record when you fell over and do all that kind of stuff. So we called that Smashed Avocado to go with the peanut butter. And then we wrote our ticketing engine for our, when you email procurement at PB Tech and so forth and licensing, it all goes into a ticketing engine. You can see the tickets on our website if you've looked into your tickets and support tickets. And that was called Streaky Bacon. And so as you can see, we've got a bit of a theme here that makes us all fat at PB Tech, but we called our AI engine Olive. So the journey that we went through with Olive is an interesting one, and I see it with all of our customers. You've got to start with somebody, you've got to start with your CFO, let's face it, because it's very expensive. And the way that we've justified Olive is that, by the way, the best example of Olive working I found was a customer email saying, "Where the hell's my pen? It was supposed to be here last week." And so you've got some points of entry, data entry from an email. You've got the email address and you've got where the hell's my something. So you've got a complaint and wanting to know where something is, and you've got a pen. And so Olive was able to extract the customer, go through the customer's orders, find the last orders that looked like a pen, and find out where it was, and find the track and trace details. So that creates, that needs ingest of all of the tables that were associated with that data, and needs an AI engine that can actually make sense of it all, and then a language learning model that can reply like a nice, polite human. And so that's what AI does for PB Tech, and we're soon to be hopefully releasing that onto our website in coming months, so you'll be able to ask rude questions like that and get an answer off our website without bothering our people. And so on our support desk, there's probably about 10 staff that just answer questions about where's my stuff. Real basic things that just go in, open up the customer, cut and paste their email, find out who the customer is, find out their orders. You can imagine how many, that might take 5 minutes. And you multiply that out by hundreds of emails, and you get to a big bunch of money. And so our CFO, we've come up with a plan, come up to our idea. The CFO has said, yes, it's a good plan. It stacks up financially. Go for your life. And so we've carved off a bunch of our development team. There's about 3 of them working on this project, and they have made it, which is great. So, and it's taken probably a year, and it will take another year, I think, before it's any good. Really before it's as amazing as we dream. And so you're talking about 3 expensive staff, coding away, making a piece of software, and for 2 years. And that end result will be that we're much quicker. We can not have those 10 staff answering dumb questions, but we can use them for value-added questions. And that's the finances of our journey. And I think the finances are the most important part of the AI decision, to be honest. We're going to be talking about Copilot, Microsoft's Copilot, and how that works, and the different versions that Microsoft can bring to the table. PB don't use any of those. We, as I said, write our own software internally, and we've called upon another AI engine to do our guts of our learning. And is anyone from Microsoft here? Probably the reason for that is financial again, because we didn't want to get ourselves into a hole where we were paying every single month after month after month after month to deliver those tools to our customers. We're determined as a company to keep our costs as low as possible. So anyway, that's Olive, that's PB's journey, and my advice to you about going forward is, first you've got to have a dream, and you've got to stack it up financially, and then the next part is how you're going to do it. And the how you're going to do it part we can help you with, and Microsoft can help you with too, as you'll see very shortly. So I think that's it.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Rodney. My name is Craig Galloway, and I am a enthusiast around AI. I really am enjoying the journey, all the new products that are coming through. My previous day-to-day job was still current, but I'm really trying to dive deep into the AI piece. Is a solutions architect within Azure and M365. So I have, I like to think, a broad knowledge around the Microsoft products. And yeah, welcome everyone. It's really, really great to see so many faces that are interested in generative AI, in AI. Yeah, just really good to see everyone. I thought I'd start things out with where we were with regards to how companies built AI out. And as Rodney correctly said, they built out Olive using probably out of the box, but more probably towards pro code. So what that really was we had a bunch of developers. They were highly skilled, they are highly skilled, and they utilize their software development kits to build a custom solution for their environment. Now, as he mentioned, the time to market with this product is long. Your financial investments from an infrastructure perspective, from a professional services perspective, those are all large, and it does take quite a lot of adoption and buy-in for such a product to get off, or for such a project to get off the ground. So what happened is, and if you You may know the product called Power Virtual Agents. Microsoft released Power Virtual Agents within the Power Platform a couple of years ago, where we were able to utilize a low-code platform. So what I mean by that is we didn't require the heavy developers anymore that knew the code inside out. We could basically use a canvas type approach where a IT engineer that doesn't necessarily know how to code could create really cool chatbots and give the users that experience that they were looking for. Now with Power Virtual Agents, we would basically use the Power Platform, we would create topics, and those topics would have static answers attached to them. So we would ask it, what is the weather today? And we would basically be able to pull that and ask and give them an answer based on a static answer. Now what happened was with the, around 2020 when ChatGPT came out, those models came out, generative AI was born, where we were basically utilizing these windows or these queries with natural language and getting an answer back automatically. Excuse me. So what Microsoft did is they had a look at the Power Virtual Agents, which was a great platform to build upon. And what they've done is they've created Copilot Studio by overlaying the generative AI piece within Power Virtual Agents. It got renamed and it's now called Copilot Studio. So what we're getting with Copilot Studio now is we're getting all the enhancements and the capabilities around generative AI using those large language models in the background. And we're able to create these quite quickly with low or no code approaches. So you'll see in the demo that I create, it'll be no code being developed, no code being written. We're going to create a Copilot, and you'll see how easy it is for us to interact with different types of data that we'll create. So right now, as we stand today, we're looking at about a 20% to 80% split between autonomous tasks being done by Copilots, whereas 80% of it is still being done by ourselves. So we're doing those repetitive tasks, it's what we've been doing historically, and we're starting to just investigate and try and see how can these Copilots assist us with tasks that we do on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, or how do we give a better service delivery to our end customers. Now it's predicted that this is going to completely switch on its head, where 80% of the autonomous tasks will be done by Copilots and only 20% will be done by ourselves. Now this doesn't mean that we're going to be sitting back doing nothing. These things don't build themselves. These things don't not break. They certainly do break, and we're going to be able to have to fix these things. And it's also not a set and forget type of approach. We might start with a minimal viable product, and as we're building it out, we really want to enhance it. As the features get better, as the large language models get better, we want to update those and make sure we're staying on top of the service delivery. So that's where we are today. So just a quick question for everyone. Does anyone know how many Copilots exist within the Microsoft ecosystem today? Just guesses. Any guesses? Anyone's got a guess? 300? Got a 300? Got a 2? 22. 20? Cool. So 300, probably within the next month or two, there might be 300. But right now we have got 80 Copilots that are available to us today. Now the reason why there are so many and they're building out so quickly is because of what they are. So when we talk about Copilots, we're talking about it being an orchestrator. All it is an overlay of a natural language query that we can put into a little text box and ask it something in our normal language, and it's orchestrating that response on the data that we give it. So because there's 80 of them, what Microsoft's doing is they'll say something for Copilot for Microsoft 365. They're overlaying that over your 365 data. Something like Copilot for sales, they're overlaying that over Dynamics for 365. So they're basically just replicating their Copilot across all of the different services or products that they have. Sorry.
What is a Copilot?
So a Copilot is exactly that. So it's an orchestrator. All it is a interaction, so a little box that says, how can I help you today? And you putting in your natural language, asking it questions. It's going in the background, all the data sources that it has connected to it. It's going to go look for that data, look for the answer, and then give you that answer back.
Now, how is it connected? How is all that data connected? Or integrated is probably a better
Yeah, great question. So, and I'll show you in the demo how we're going to do it. So basically out of the box, and this is where we get the terms a first-party Copilot and a custom Copilot. So first-party Copilot is the Copilots that you would subscribe to, like Copilot for Microsoft 365, Copilot for Sales, Copilot for GitHub, those type of things, where you're buying it and you're assigning it to a specific user. Those are called first-party Copilots. Now, out of the box, when you assign that in your environment, Microsoft has default connectors, and they're basically connecting to that data by default. So there's not a lot of configuration required at all. A custom Copilot, where we use Copilot Studio, we actually connecting that. So we will decide what our Copilot wants to achieve. We will then connect SharePoint, or we will connect SQL, or we will connect ServiceNow, and we basically allow that Copilot to access that data to bring the environment, bring those answers into you. All right. So the key difference between first-party Copilots and custom Copilots, first parties, by default, they have connected data sources. We can extend that through Copilot Studio, which I'll take you through now. And the custom Copilot is where we're building it out and we're deciding what data sources this Copilot should be allowed to see. Okay. So what is Copilot Studio? So Copilot Studio has two main objectives. The first one, if you have a license for Copilot for Microsoft 365 or Copilot for Sales, you automatically get access to Copilot Studio to extend your data sources. Okay. So if we use Copilot for Microsoft 365 data sources as an example, out of the box, it's going to have access to SharePoint, it's going to have access to OneDrive, and it's going to have access to Exchange Online. If you wanted to extend those data sources, so say, for example, you had an on-prem file share that you wanted to bring it in, or you had a SQL server that you wanted Copilot for Microsoft 365 to access, you would use Copilot Studio to create that extension for it to be able to bring that data in. Now, there's no additional cost. So if you have a license today for Microsoft or Copilot for 365 or Copilot for Sales, you are able to log into Copilot Studio, create that connector, and expand your data sources that you have.
Does that mean everybody who has the Copilot license gets access to that data, or can you restrict to?
So they'll still only have access to what they have rights to. So if you're using permissions on those files, it'll utilize that user that has that license's user account to see what they have access to. So what would happen is, as soon as you expand that data source, it's creating what is known as a semantic index. That indexing will only allow you to retrieve that data if you have at least extract rights on that file. If you have no rights to it, it won't be able to bring it back. All right.
As you get Copilot for 365, for example, does anybody in the tenant have access to it? Or can you restrict that access?
So Copilot for Microsoft 365 is a per user license. So in other words, if Craig gets a license, only I can use that tool, because it's going to basically mimic my permissions that I have to files. So if I ask a question, it'll go out, it'll say, cool, what files can Craig access, and bring back the answer based on that. Copilot Studio, we can then basically present what is known as channels. And then in the channels, we can select who has rights to that. And I'll take you guys through that in a sec. And that's the second part. So the first part, Copilot Studio, if you're looking to extend your data sources, this is the place to do it with Copilot for 365 and Copilot for Sales. The second part, if you want to create custom Copilots, that is where we want to build out a Copilot. We want the entire organization to use it. We're going to embed or publish it to our custom websites, to our Teams channels, to our Slack channels. Wherever you want to embed this Copilot, you can basically create that custom Copilot there and put it into a website or whatever.
Do you need a license for Copilot or Copilot Studio to be able to use a Copilot?
Great question. So no, you do not. So if you have a Copilot for M365 license or Sales, you can use Copilot to extend that. It is a one-to-one for that user that has that license. If you want to create a custom Copilot, you're basically licensing the entire tenant. No other users need a license, and you're paying a fixed fee every month, and it gives you 25,000 queries. So if you 25,000 questions into this Copilot per license. All right, and my colleague Liam will take you through that a bit later, but they are licensed differently, all right? And you got in the second option, or the options you have for Copilot Studio are standalone, which means you can publish it to any channel. So you can embed it in your website, custom websites, Slack, Facebook, Telegram. There's a whole lot of things you can do with it. Or if you just want to do it in Teams, for example, so you've got a tenant and you want to create a custom Copilot to put into your Teams, you do get a Teams only license as well, which is a little bit cheaper than the standalone one. So depending on where you're going to publish your custom Copilot would dictate what license you would want to purchase for your environment.
Are there limitations to what it can integrate with or access?
There's no limitations because you can create a complete out-of-the-box custom connector. You would just need those development skills to develop the right APIs, etc. to call it. But there's hundreds of out-of-the-box connectors that Microsoft has within Studio that you can just utilize. And I'll take you guys through it as well.
How do you manage the security of that?
So again, all the security of it is all done either through a service principal, which is basically an account that has certain access to data, or again, we can replicate the user who's logging in. So that user, it supports modern authentication. So that user would log in, authenticate with their MFA policies that are applied within the organization. Once that person is authenticated, they're going to get what is known as a primary refresh token, and it'll basically mimic me and what permissions I have to be able to access that. All right. So it can't go rogue and just go grab things without knowing who's actually requesting what. No worries. So just to dive a little bit deeper, and this will give you a better understanding of it. So I mentioned first-party Copilots, and I completely understand this is very confusing with all the Copilots that there are. But on the top there, you can see those are first-party Copilots. All right, so we have Copilot for 365, Sales Copilot, Service Copilot. These are the Copilots that you're going to buy and you're going to assign to a user within your M365 Admin Center. That user is going to get the permissions to use that Copilot. All right. These are also the ones that have by default data associated with them. You turn it on, it'll go find that data, it'll index that data, and off you go. There is nothing that you need to do as a pre-configuration for this to work. Yes, there are things to take into account, like having the data be mature, making sure that you have data loss prevention policies, etc. in place, just to protect yourself from a data perspective. But if you turn it on, add a license, it's going to work out of the box. All right. The second part is here at the bottom, where we have Microsoft Copilot Studio. So this is where we extend these. So we basically extend our first parties using Copilot Studio, but we also build our custom Copilots over here. All right. And then finally, if we had a limitation within Copilot Studio that we can't achieve and we've got a business requirement, we can then even extend that further into Azure AI Studio, where we can bring things in like translations or different languages or whatever it may be. We can always bring that in as well. So you can see how we go through the various steps. We're not just a set and forget here. We can definitely extend data as we move forward. So these are just a couple of screenshots of the plugins or extensions that we've done. So this one, for example, here is just a knowledge base where a new user's been employed, and how do they connect to the corporate network? This will search a document, a knowledge base within SharePoint, whatever it may be, and bring out the answers. The second one is how we're connecting to a third party, so outside of the environment, where we've connected to Workday, where it's going to go do a leave balance check for us. All right. And the third one is where we go into a ERP system and it's going to look for any pending expenses. Now, I've got a couple of questions in the past with regards to why would I adopt something like this? And it's because I think we're going to change the way we find and ask and look for data. Traditionally, we would go and do within Windows, Windows Explorer, we'd go and search for a file called invoices, for example. Then we did it in SharePoint. Then we'd use wildcards like little asterisks and try and find files. Now, even that is going to change, in my opinion. I believe that all of these little chat Windows environment, that is what we're going to start interacting with, because they're going to have access to so much more data and access it so much more quicker because of the way that it actually indexes the data, we're going to be able to get access to data far quicker. And as soon as we start expanding all of these copilots to the data that we require, a user doesn't really have to leave that one window to be able to find data from multiple sources. And that's where I think we're going to be going with this. So if you think about, the demo that I'll use, a help desk engineer who's sitting at the help desk, a call comes in and a user says, I can't log in. He's brand new, he's just starting out, he has no idea how to reset passwords or whatever it may be. He can literally ask that help desk chat, how do I reset a password? It's going to bring it up. How do I connect to the user's machine? It's going to bring it up. And it's going to bring it up based on the data that we approve it to use. Not just go wild and go rogue and try and find an answer from some random site that's incorrect. And that's where I think we're going to start seeing the interactions with it.
Right.
Yep.
Is it fair to say that normal one-to-one copilots that you buy out of the box are used to dealing with the data that's in your SharePoint or wherever you purchased it for? Then the next level Copilot Studio can use SAP or Workday or another database that you are drawing information from. But if you don't, but you still need to know what you're asking it. So you jump into the lead balances one. You need to know that you're asking it for lead balance, so you use the lead balance Copilot. If you don't really know what you want, then Copilot Studio isn't for you. Then you need to go to the next one, so you can ask any random question, and it will go up and find data from all of the different sources that you've got in your organisation, because you don't really know what you're asking it yet. Is that the transition, or can you use one Copilot to ask for your lead balances and your invoices history?
Yeah, great question. So we've got options available to us. We can certainly use one Copilot because it can have access to multiple data sources, all right? But what we can do, there's a thing called skills within Microsoft Copilot Studio, where if we wanted to, we could segregate these Copilots. So we can create one for a specific function. And then down the line, we say, oh, we've got this requirement, we need to create another one. And we create that. And what you do is you actually give the one Copilot the skill of the other one. So as soon as this Copilot gets asked something or a topic that it has no idea, it knows to pass that on to the next Copilot as a skill. And it'll give you the answer, but it's not actually generating the answer itself. It's getting it from the other Copilot that you have. So you can see how we can scale with it. We don't have to start big bang, have everything in place and build it out, and that'll be our minimal viable product. We can start small. We can add data sources if we want to, or if we have different teams working on it, we can always leverage those other ones using this Copilot skills and transfer it off. So what does the journey look like? Now, this is the typical journey. Now, this doesn't mean that you guys, this is the journey that you have to follow, but this is what we're seeing in the industry right now. We're seeing a lot of customers looking at Copilot for M365 right now. They're adopting this Copilot, they're turning it on within the organizations. And like I mentioned, out of the box, this has access to SharePoint, OneDrive, and Exchange Online, okay? Any data sitting outside of that organ or outside of that will not be able to be accessed by default. If you're looking to extend that, we then just log into Copilot Studio. We create that connector, which I will show you guys in a sec. And it basically will then allow that data to be able to be indexed, where the users can then start using that data as well. That again is not an additional license, all right? If you have this license, you will have access to extend in Copilot Studio. No. So you get a default allocation, all right, which is about, I think it's 5 gigs per license. If you ran out of that, then you would have to expand on your Dataverse. So yeah, great question. The connectors are in preview at the moment. So the extension that we're doing over here within Copilot Studio are in preview. So is it one person that requires this type of tooling because they need to generate documentation rapidly, save time within that? Or am I trying to deliver a Copilot service to mini parties? And then the second question is it an internally focused Copilot? So only my internal staff will be able to utilize this because this is information that only they should have access to? Or am I putting this onto a public facing environment, so a public website, for someone to track their packages, for someone to, I don't know, see if there's an outage, whatever it may be, or whatever that service is. We just got to make a choice of how we want to publish that Copilot, because it talks to what license type we should get. Okay. So from a demo perspective, I'm just going to take us through creating a Copilot. And you can see this is a bit of a road, not a roadmap, but it's just really what we should follow around creating Copilot. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, it should never be a set and forget type of product. We're going to certainly create it. We're going to have version 1, but we certainly want to enhance it as the technology gets better, as new models come through, that type of stuff. Now, an example of that would be Copilot Studio uses what is known as the GPT 3.5 Turbo large language model underneath that. You would have probably heard that GPT-4 has been released. So if, for example, you had to use 4, was the feature within this large language model that you needed, then Copilot Studio wouldn't be the right fit because we do not have control over the versions of the LLM model underneath. If you needed something like that, that's where you would move into Pro Code and move into something like Azure AI Studio or Azure OpenAI, where you have full control of what models to use. You can use the Meta models, you can use the Microsoft models or the OpenAI models, and you can choose what models you want to use. All right. So from a Copilot Studio perspective, what's underneath from a LLM perspective, we don't have control over that. We'll just by default use what is there. Sorry? I believe it's in preview right now, yeah.
So with that, let's jump into the demo. So as you can see, the homepage for copilotstudio.microsoft.com, as we open up that web page, we are presented with a couple of templates that are available for us to use as quick starts. So depending on what our use case is, we may choose to use one of these templates that are available to us, or we could create a blank template and start from scratch. So you can see over here, we've got a help desk, expense tracking, HR benefits, etc. So the first thing I really want to showcase is the extension that I spoke about. So there's first-party copilots that we can extend our data sources into sources that are outside of the default data locations. And to do that, we use Copilot Studio. So if you do have a license for one of those first-party copilots, either being Copilot for Microsoft 365 or Copilot for Sales, we can then extend it through Copilot Studio. So to do that, we would basically click on Create, and we present it with two options. We can create a new custom Copilot, which I'll take you through now, or we can use the extension, which is a new Microsoft Copilot action. So as you can see over here, we'll basically be creating a connector. And in that connector, we would then be able to see what type of connection we want to choose. So that would be, in my example here, I'm going to use Dropbox, for example. Whoops, if I can type, so Dropbox. We're going to select Dropbox. We will choose a Dropbox solution. And basically, it's going to take us through a wizard where we'll use a username and password that will have access and have permissions to be able to do what we're going to ask it to do. So we've got a couple of actions available. Do we want to delete a file, append a file, get a file, whatever it may be? So, for example, here, let's do that. We're going to, that doesn't really matter. Get file content, click next. We'll be able to configure the different input and the descriptions of that. It'll then take us to a review and a test. And basically what it'll do here is the credentials that we are going to be providing it, it'll ask us for those. Well, I've already added, but we could add a new connection over here, put in the username and password that will basically do the action or the request on our behalf. We click test. basically what would happen there is it'll test that whatever you're asking it to do would work. And once it's done that, we would basically publish that. Now, I'm just going to cancel this quickly and just show you what that looks like from a end user perspective. So just give me a sec. I'm just going to bring that up now. So we'll see over here. So I'm just going to filter this. So over here, if I bring this into the view, you'll see that we have at the bottom right here, plugins. So as soon as we publish that plugin, we are then going to be able to see different plugins that are available to our end users. So under Copilot Studio, we would have a Dropbox plugin here that the user can turn on or off. Whatever we publish, the users will then be able to turn on or off, or we can force it to be able to that the user has to use those. And basically, once those are published to the users, they'll be able to utilize them and access that data that we have connected. The second part, as I mentioned, that's how we extend our first-party copilots. The second part that I mentioned was that we can create custom copilots. All right. So we're going to create new now, and it's quite an interesting I suppose, approach to creating, because we're going to use a copilot to create a copilot. So as you can see here, we have a prompt where it's going to ask you, what would you like to create today? So basically it says, I'm happy to help. In a few sentences, tell me how will this copilot assist your users? So I'm basically going to say it's going to be for help desk support. It's then going to ask me, cool, can you give me a brief overview of how? So I'm basically just going to quickly copy and paste this so you don't have to watch me type. But basically what I'm going to say is the Copilot will look up a knowledge base. So I'm thinking about a end user or a help desk that is going to call in. This person's going to not know how to answer or fix the problem, and this is what they're going to utilize to assist them. It's going to ask me what type of tone, so I'm going to say keep it professional, but if you had a specific tone that maybe your brand is using, so maybe you guys are humorous or less professional, depending on what tone you want to use, you can ask it would answer the questions in a specific tone. If they're going to ask me, do I want to add knowledge, which I'll do later because I'll show you exactly how we do that. So I'll just add that, but later, and then no, and then I'll just click I'm done. And what it'll do there, it will utilize all of that information. So the more information we put in this, the more it's going to be able to create a more accurate custom copilot for you. But with that, I've done a couple of answers, very short answers, and it will then go and create this for me. Now, I'm going to hit create. It'll take about 10 or 15 seconds, and your Copilot will be up and running. Now, just keep in mind that this is going to be up and running without any data sources that we have added just yet. And the reason for that is that it's going to, by default, enable the generative AI models in the background that we are able to utilize. So if I, for example, ask this, how do I fix a slow PC? It's going to be able to answer me, even though it doesn't have any of my custom knowledge or my personal knowledge I've added, because it is leaning on the large language models in the background with generative AI. So it's going to be using its knowledge to answer these out of the box. And where it's done that is we can actually have a look at it over here. If we have a look at the topics under the conversational boosting, you'll see under the data sources, by default, it's going to allow the AI to use its own general knowledge. Now, by default, that is enabled. So we will then create this. By default, this will be enabled, and it will start working outside of the box. Now, if we wanted to be more restrictive, so we don't want all of the knowledge that it has just to be throwing answers to our queries, because we want to be more restrictive and have more control over what the answers could potentially be. and we want to make sure that the answers are going to be accurate, this is where we add our own knowledge to our custom copilots. Now, to do that, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. You can see over here on the top, we have add knowledge, and we can turn this one off and then turn this one on and then add knowledge over here. So you can see that we can add public websites. So if we click there, we can put in a link there and it will add it. We can upload static files as well. So any file that we might come across, it can be up for it to be able to utilize that data. Just as we extended in the first party Copilot, as I showed you earlier, we can do the same here and extend those data sources to where we want it to be. So I'm just going to use this one over here for now because I have already configured this instead of going through it. So you can see over here from a knowledge, excuse me, from a knowledge perspective, I have added learn.microsoft.com, and I've also added a SharePoint folder. Okay, so this is a document library within my SharePoint, and you can see it over here. It's got one file that says solving 50 common IT support problems. So I've added I've added this as a document library that is going to be able to reference, and that data would be then be available to the user that will utilize it. So if I ask how do I fix a slow PC, you'll see that it's going to go have a look at what it has from a knowledge perspective and come back with that. So you can see over here, the first one that is picked up is solving 50 common IT support problems. That's where it's getting it from. Because I have linked the SharePoint site to that, it's done that. The second one is where it's picking up from the learn.microsoft.com site. So if I actually click that, it's going to take you to that website, which is microsoft.com. And I'll show you exactly where it's getting that from now. But you can see, compared this to the other one that we did earlier, which was the query on the one which built out and by default had that generative AI enabled, that the answers are going to be completely different because this one over here is the one that I have created or removed the generative AI option, and I've added my custom knowledge to it. And that's why that one will have a different answer, because we've been more restrictive or more prescriptive over what data is available. Now this thing is just not responding, so I'm quickly going to refresh that page. Just give me a second. So from a knowledge perspective, I've showed you that we can add websites, we can add files, we can add all those certain things. Now, this is all done under the conversational boosting piece. I mean, doing the data sources over here. So I'll just show you over here. Just give me a sec. Conversational boosting. There we go. So you can see over here, I've said search only these selected sources. So search learn.microsoft.com, search the connected SharePoint site. And you can see below here under classic data, we have another option. And it's called search with Bing custom search, or we can say search public websites. Now, if we wanted to be prescriptive around the data sources, even if they're public based, but we want to make sure that not any website out there, because we do know that there are websites that have got inaccurate information, and we don't want that information to be passed on as a reliable answer to our end users. So we want to make sure that only specific websites can be used or referenced for the answers to our queries. We can use what is known as Bing custom search. Now, what that is a we go to customsearch.ai, and in there we are able to add websites that we trust or that we feel have accurate information and that our Copilot can use to reference for answers. So we're going to build a list of active websites, and in that list we would list all of the different public websites that are available. Once we've done that, we publish it, and it goes into what is known as a production. Just let this load quickly. Goes into a production environment. And within that production environment, we have what is known as a configuration ID. That configuration or custom ID is then copied. So you can see a custom configuration ID. We copy that, we put it into our search, and this Copilot will then only be able to reference the sites that we have added within our active environment. We can also adjust the rankings. So if we have 3 websites that have got similar answers or similar content, but we feel that the one is got a higher accuracy or a higher weighting, we can adjust that and we'll use each of them within that hierarchical order as well. So an example here, we've got Microsoft and Ingram. So it'll be able to answer a question as what does Ingram Micro do? So it'll go and it'll look at that website. It'll be able to pull out that information because we have given it the capability to use that website. Now, if I had to ask it a question that is completely outside of that, so for example, what model cars do Ford offer? It won't be able to find an answer for this because of the sources, the knowledge that we have added to this custom Copilot. It doesn't have any reference for this. Okay, so did find it. Give me a sec. I just want to see where it's found this. It might be that I haven't published anyone. Yes, my apologies. Give me a sec. I had Ford in here earlier. Let me use actually, let me just publish it. I'll show you how to publish it as well. So I made a change earlier where there was Ford in here. So I'm just going to publish this quickly to update it, and then it shouldn't be able to answer it. So let me just refresh this. This is when the demo gods I didn't update it. That's why. So give me a sec. Okay, cool. What model cars do Ford offer? Now, because I've published the update of this, it shouldn't be able to answer this. Give me a sec. See if it'll do it now. I have refreshed it. There we go. So because I've removed the configuration that was over here, it can't actually find information on this anymore. Okay, so what model cars do Ford offer? Nothing's available. Now, if I go to my custom search and I add www.ford.co.nz, all right, I add that and then I publish it again, I will then refresh that Copilot, and that Copilot will then be able to find an answer because I have added it to the knowledge. So let's have a look here quickly. So it's going to do a search, and it should be able to bring back an answer now for me because I have added that data source. There we go. So that's exactly how we can control, even though the data is public, we are able to control through Bing Custom Search the capability of the environments or the public websites that it is able to use and bring back answers on the queries for us. Now, if we have a look at the different channels that we can publish these Copilots to, now you'll remember earlier in the presentation, I spoke about 2 ways to license Copilot Studio. The first one being within Teams only. So that would be that we would publish the channel or the Copilot within a channel within Teams. So what that looks like really is over here, where you would have a bot that gets published within your Teams, and people would then interact with it. How do I fix a slow PC? So that basically interact with it through their chat, only through Teams. We wouldn't publish it through anything else. Now, If you wanted to publish outside of Teams, then you would want to go with the standalone license that I spoke about, because there we have multiple options available to us. So we can publish it to a demo website, custom websites that uses iframe, so we can embed it onto any website, mobile apps. There's a whole lot of different channels that we can also out of the box plug it into. So you can see from a publishing perspective, the channels become a lot more customizable when we use the standalone feature compared to the Teams only one. All right, so you can see over here, this is the Teams one. It works exactly the same way, but everyone will just interact with it through Teams. So if you think about building a custom Copilot out, you want to think about your use case. So you want to say, is this custom Copilot going to be utilized by external people? It was only going to be for my internal staff. Once we've made a decision on that, we also have to make a decision on how do we authenticate to those data sources that we're going to be adding, that knowledge that we're adding. So an example here would be, I added this SharePoint knowledge base over here. That means that I have to authenticate as a user that has the correct permissions to be able to read this. All right. So for example, if I wanted to put this Copilot as a public facing website, and I didn't want people to have to log into the Copilot, then I would have to consider how they're going to be accessing this data. Generally, that data would then be put as a public facing document or public facing information that wouldn't require any authentication to it. If it's sitting within this SharePoint that I have over here, I have to authenticate to it, because the SharePoint knowledge base is has got permissions against it. So not everyone can access it. There is no anonymous access to it. All right. So with that, I would have to then create a authentication method. So if we go over here and we go have a look at the security, we are able to click on authentication. You can see no authentication. That means that we don't require anyone to authenticate. Keep in mind that the data that this one would enter would have to be also non-authenticated data. If you wanted to just use it within Teams or Power Apps, you can do SSO with Microsoft, or you can also do SSO outside of the Microsoft environment, and you can utilize different service providers such as Azure Active Directory, OAuth, etc., and configure what that looks like from a SSO perspective or authentication perspective. Now, because I added that SharePoint, I will require the users to log in. And what that looks like is, if we look at the demo website, this is what will happen. You're basically going to get the help desk or the Copilot sitting there asking you to log in first. So you'd basically click log in. It would, let me just refresh this quickly. It would basically ask you to log in with your username and password. Once you're logged in with your username and password, it's going to give you a almost like a MFA, or basically a code. We copy that code, you're going to paste it in as a form of multi-factor, and it will then authenticate me. Now I am able to access this SharePoint file because it knows which user is accessing or to utilize this Copilot. So it's really important also decision point where, what is authentication going to look like? Are we going to build a single custom Copilot? Are we going to build multiple custom Copilots? If we do build multiple custom Copilots, the one might be public facing with no authentication. The second one might be internally focused with authentication. And the nice thing about it is that as we grow these different Copilots, we are able to offset them against each other, or offload them against each other through what is known as skills. So we are able to share these Copilots across each other. So if one Copilot that we built maybe last year and it's been working perfectly, but now a new requirements come through and another team is developing or has developed this Copilot, we can then create those topics and offload that one to another Copilot. So you can see how we're going to keep building on the solution and just make it better and better as we building out these various Copilots for us. So that's really what I wanted to demo today. I really hope that it was interesting. Oh, the last thing before I go, last thing I wanted to do, there is a thing called actions. Okay, so what I've shown you now is that we have a chatbot. That chatbot or that orchestrator is you're going to ask questions, going to give you answers. We are also able to make the Copilot do actions, and those actions are things that we can make it do. So an example over here is that I have asked it. So I've created a Office 365 one where it's basically going to send an email. So think about this as either escalating a ticket. So your customer or your user is interacting with your Copilot, and that user gets to a point where the Copilot is not really providing what that user is asking. So we want to be able to escalate. So think about this being able to take an input and provide an action for that. So this can be an email, this can be a connecting to a call, whatever you want that action to be. So this one over here specifically is dropping an email, and the input is basically that you set whatever you want and what you want to do from an output perspective. So if I say, can I speak to a human, it'll basically then trigger an email that has been sent to me now because of the input that I've asked it to do. All right. Similar with another one that I have over here. This one is a restart of an Azure virtual machine. If I say to it restart a VM, it'll ask me what the VM name is. And then basically it'll be able to restart that virtual machine as well. So you can see how we want to try and build these Copilots out depending on what their use case is. But we might want to build this out that an employee or a user doesn't really have to leave this chat experience. They'll be able to assist and troubleshoot doing just general terms or natural language, asking it to do, I don't know, restart this or log this ticket or whatever it may be. And we are basically building out that everything can be done here. We don't actually have to leave this environment to be able to go and do certain things. So yeah, that's actions, really, really powerful. We definitely want to incorporate these as we're building out these custom Copilots. They really are super powerful. And they do have a couple of out the box. So we can obviously call different third-party APIs. We can create flows. So if you're familiar with the Power Platform, we can certainly plug into all the flows that you might have created. There's a whole lot of stuff we can do within Azure as well. So have a look at the actions. Really, really powerful. I'm seeing quite a lot of the IoT stuff coming through. So within the Copilots, if there's a refrigerator that requires a certain temperature, and they get a alert that's saying that this has gone above 2 degrees, for example, we can ask the Copilot to reduce the temperature or turn or down power on a light, power off a light. There's a whole lot of stuff that we can do with these actions as well. So super powerful stuff. And with that, guys, that was really what I wanted to showcase. I hope that has been informative. And yeah, I think in summary, we really do have first-party Copilots and we have custom Copilots. The decision is not a one or the other. A decision should be really of how we're going to build this out. If we do choose a first-party Copilot, do we need to extend outside of the default data sources? If we do, we use Copilot Studio. If we're looking for a single Copilot to many users experience rather than a first-party Copilot, then perhaps we want to look at, is it a public facing? Is it a private facing? What does that use case look like? Are we going to build one? Are we going to build multiple? And then are we going to obviously add those skills and offload them to the various Copilots as it gets built out? So yeah, a really, really exciting time. A lot to think about, lots to test and build. Copilot Studio does have a trial license that you can add and go play with. I highly recommend that you look at doing that. Go add the trial to your 365 tenant, have a play around, and you'll see how powerful this tool can be. With that, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, let us know if we can assist with anything in the near future.
That's the demo, guys. It's really, really, I think, once you start playing with it, it's a really cool tool, and I think it just helps with the way that they've set it up, and we can just talk to it and do the tests, and it's just really intuitive from a troubleshooting perspective as well to figure out where those problems lie. And as I was just showing you, not a single line of code was written. It's just basically a platform that we can just interact with and build out. Now, the last thing I just want to share with you, and it might be a little bit of a difficult slide to see, but I'm going to share this with everyone as well. After this, I'll give it to Alex and Victor and the team. But basically what I wanted to show you, this is a little bit of a knowledge tree or decision tree that I've built out. Now, basically, the idea of this is, when do I use what product? There are so many products out there, even within the Microsoft environments, that we need to either consider, or which ones do I apply where? Now, this is going to be continuously updated, obviously, but this is the first part of it, where I just basically take you through, is my solution focused on first parties, so knowledge workers? If yes, then we're going to consider things like Copilot for 365, etc. Then I'm going to ask a question, do we need custom data sources? So as I've taken you guys through, when we need custom data sources, we want to consider using Copilot Studio to extend that first Copilot. But if we want to publish it to multiple people, then we want to utilize Copilot Studio custom Copilots. And you can see over here, if I ask the question, do I want to use this service for internal use only? If it's yes, Copilot Studio for Teams license. If it's no, publish it outside, then we want to do with Copilot Studio standalone. The only time that we want to go outside of that decision tree would be when we need pro code. So we have a bunch of developers, they want full control. We know where we're going with this. This is a 1, 2, 3 year project. We want pro code, we want multimodal. That's when we start looking at things like Azure AI Studio and Azure Open AI Studio. But keep in mind, these are not separate environments. We can always extend them across each other. All right. So I will share this decision tree. Perhaps it'll be helpful for you guys to have a look at, and who knows, maybe it'll give you some guidance to which products to use. So either change the data or break up the topics. So what I found was, if you have specific topics and you associate data sources with those topics, it just seems to flow a lot better. So if you have one topic that says everything and you just connect all the data there, it doesn't have that way of branching out and saying, okay, well, this is not working, let me try this. You know what I mean? So we really want to try and give it as much options as possible, but systematically. So think about the conversation piece that we're going to be having with the organization or with the end customers. What are the likely topics going to be? Build those out. The analytics that we're going to get on a daily basis or monthly basis, whatever we pull it, it's in a Power BI dashboard, so you can actually interact with it. And it's basically going to say, well, this user asked this on this topic, and you say, oh, we didn't think about that. Add that topic. Make sure that the data that we've added, the knowledge that we've added, can actually accurately answer that. And that's what I mean. It's not a set and forget. You're really going to work on this thing, make sure it works. Gets up. Yeah, in a way, yeah. And again, that's also going to help scale. So if your data changes, you don't have to change one topic for everything. You know what I mean? Because you want to be able to change one thing with leaving the rest alone, type of thing. So change management becomes a lot easier as well with that approach. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry I took so long. I hope it was interesting. I'm going to hand over now to Liam.
I'm Liam, so I look after more the licensing side as opposed to the technical aspect that Craig is very, very good at, which is why we keep him on. So from my end, this is going to just take a couple of minutes, just kind of go through what the costing is. Obviously, you want to know how it works and what it costs. Craig's already covered a lot of the licensing side. So I'm actually going to start off on the right. Copilot, I guess for 365, as we all know, just really clear per user, per year license. Yep, probably we'll see a monthly paid version of that at some point from Microsoft, but I'm not going to even bother asking them because they're probably in the dark as much as we are. So I just be really clear of that. It's a per user per year, 582 as the RRP. Coming over to Copilot Studio, very different. So we're talking a per tenant, per license per tenant, and that can obviously be done like your 365 subscriptions, pay monthly, annual or monthly commit, and then obviously pay up front for the year as well. $324 RRP. I think it's an absolute steal given what you can do, who that can extend to, and what channels. As Craig already mentioned, 25,000 responses per month. Obviously, packs will be available to obviously further that, of course, or just get another studio license is the other option. And I guess the other point that Craig roughly covered is around where you can actually publish it, because we have unlimited web publications. Pretty awesome. Again, which is kind of why I look at this as such a steal. 100 Teams channels. So there's still a huge amount of areas that you can put that out to. And obviously a few more commitment terms from a licensing perspective to align with your 365 stack as well. So I feel like Copilot Studio in comparison to 365, it really opens up a lot of possibilities there. And obviously the two combined, as you've seen from the demo, how those fit together. I'm also real as well that Copilot Studio is considered GA, so generally available. Now, Copilot 365 is still technically in public preview. So what that sort of means is we also have to be a bit realistic with the product, and sometimes it does fail when you give it certain requests that are maybe super GPU heavy in PowerPoint or something. So just being real and understanding that is still in that stage as well from Microsoft. And that's obviously, I guess, a different service level compared to something that's fully GA at this point. So just please be aware of that, of course. But as you can see, Studio's really sort of been leading the charge, I feel like, with a lot of that generative AI. Cool, so that's really it from my the licensing side. Was there any questions on that before we carry on? Yes?
The tools that Craig showed to build your Copilot and the sandboxing so you can test it, is that available even if you haven't purchased the license yet? So you can actually do the development, show it to the CFO and say, look, pay $300 a month and you get your 25,000 tips against this. Can you sort of demo it and build it for free before you go away?
Yeah, so that has a trial license quite nicely. 365, Copilot 365 does not. So really, really good point to note there as well. Other option always, and often I'll probably recommend just even doing a monthly commit on that one. Yep, pay that 20% more. So you're right, can be a bit more expensive, but a great way to obviously do it as a bit of a POC and make sure you get it done right first of all. So that's another option, which is under Microsoft's NCE licensing. You can at least do that for a month or a couple of months if you want to, rather than having to commit for that whole year up front.
We'll just quickly wrap up because we're being a bit over time already. But yeah, but we're going to stick around so you guys can ask any questions. I guess the call to action here for all of you is, digest all that information that you just saw. Now we can have evaluation meeting with you together with these guys to discuss how that would look like internally for you guys. And if you want to trail into the further discussions about getting help to configure the product, or even looking to the option that Rodney mentioned, might not be the right product for you, might be a hard-coded AI, might be the best outcome, then we can help you guys with that as well, right? So just stick around, talk to your account manager or to us directly if you want to progress the conversation further. And we're going to stick around. So come on, have a chat. And I hope you guys enjoyed it.